Alright, good evening everyone and welcome back to the channel. We are looking at the 5th round of the Tokai Open, which took place here in Japan, Nagoya. It's a 5-round, 2-day tournament, FIDE rated. It's the first time we got to trot out our new FIDE rating. So in the 5th round we had our final boss, the strongest player we faced during the tournament, in Tyler Scott. Tyler is Mr. Nagoya himself. He's been in Japan for quite a long time as well. He's quite a strong player. I think his rating went up from this actually. It was around 1950 at the time we played. And yeah, he plays very well and actually wins a few tournaments here and there as well in Japan's general chess scene. So this is the second time we're going to face a Grunfeld. We're white again. We're going to open up with d4. Let's see how we did. So d4, knight f6, c4, g6, and then c3. With this point, as I mentioned in other videos already, I could have gone f3 if I knew there was a Grunfeld coming, if I really wanted to avoid it. But I didn't know, and also I didn't specifically know if I want to avoid it, because that f3 move is fairly committal. It does open up that dark square diagonal around the king if you castle kingside. So I just continued with knight c3 and he played d5. So here we go. It's the second Grunfeld of the tournament for us. We've had another Grunfeld in round 2. So we play the exchange again. e4, he takes, we take, and in this position, after he plays bishop g7, in the previous round we actually started with knight f3, which is a move. It's actually like the second highest, or the second most popular move at the master level in the database. But the main move and the one that I decided to play this game was bishop c4. The only really reason was because I thought he might put me under some pressure with after knight f3. I was a little bit unsure what he might be able to do to me by pinning this knight. It's not actually an immediate problem. You could immediately try kick away the bishop with h3, for instance, but I was just maybe not really so excited. And also I realized after the first time I faced the Grunfeld that maybe I'd messed up the move order a bit. So I was happy to play bishop c4. So here he continues c5 main move, and then I go knight e2. And now the point being I have f3 if I want to, and then I would have this nice pawn structure. So I do play the f pawn eventually, but I do it kind of in my own time. So yeah. And obviously I didn't know that it was going to be a Grunfeld. Otherwise maybe I would have played the f3 line just to kind of, surprise my opponent a bit. Although I don't think he would be too surprised. He's quite experienced. Anyway, he castles, and this is now the Spassky variation. If you just continue with knight c3 or knight c6 directly, this is the classical variation, but we're going to transpose, so don't worry about it too much. I castle, he plays knight c6, and I play bishop e3. And here is kind of one of the big branches that we could have. The main two moves will be bishop g4 actually, or queen c7, but there is also this b6 move, this knight a move. And also, this is something that it shows that I need to learn a little bit more theory. Bishop g4, main move in this position, to me looks like an absolute mistake. You just, you give me f3, and then, I just get a tempo. Like, that's not bad. I'm very happy to have this pawn structure building into the center of the board. Why is that so bad? But anyway, in this position, they can drop their bishop back, or they can play knight f5, which was a move they could have played directly as well, hitting the light square bishop, and I can either drop it back to safety on d3, or I can put it on b3 where it could be taken, could be pushed away with c5 for instance. So I probably would have gone with bishop d3 myself, because in an event that they for instance pushed, then I could go to bishop c2, and that feels a little bit more comfortable, even though it's the same position. I don't want to, risk the chance they take my bishop anyway, and if they push, I'll end up in the same position anyway. But they didn't do any of those things. They actually played b6. And now you'll see that b6 does defend the c-pawn, but the c-pawn is still attacked twice. So actually the pawn is currently insufficiently defended, and I can take it. The main move here is actually rook c1, but I don't know the theory to that degree. So I said, oh, okay, great. I guess I'll take a pawn. My c-pawn is protected here. And the line has some value for black because they get the e5 square for their knight. So I've already highlighted it here. Knight e5 is going to be a critical idea for black in the position we get on the board. And it was something that I needed to understand that I didn't, and it caused me to get into a little bit of trouble. So after I take, they actually play queen c7, which is the main move. And in this position, you can see this this dark square bishop is staring straight down this long diagonal still. And I have now two choices. The best move here is knight d4, blocking up the dark diagonal, putting pressure on the knight. And there's a line here where they move their knight out of the way, and then I hit the queen. And after the queen moves, I can come in and hit the rook as well. And it's all equal. I'm not getting an advantage, but it does look like I would put black in a bit of a spot. But I didn't play knight d4. I actually just continued by going, oh, okay, well, you're really sacrificing a pawn. I'll take it, thank you. And here they take with the a pawn, and now I have a move again. The main move is rook b1, which is the one I played. But a move that might have saved me significant trouble in the long run is something like bishop f4. Bishop f4 comes up both in kind of theory and existing games and from the engine. And the idea is really that the knight is coming to e5, and then there's going to be a continuation, knight g4, which will open up the queen onto the h2 pawn. So if you already put your bishop on this diagonal, then that isn't nearly as scary as it could have been. You can play h3 and tuck the bishop away. You can put the bishop on g3 if you really want to. It actually just defends your king quite nicely. But I didn't consider that. You can also move the light square bishop, but I played kind of the main move that most masters play, rook b1. I feel very smart. The point is that I'm putting double pressure on this b pawn, so you can see here this pawn is actually already attacked by my rook and by my dark square bishop, and I'm also getting out of this diagonal that the dark square bishop is looking down, so my rook isn't accidentally going to fall and I lose the exchange, which could be okay in some positions because it's the dark square bishop for black around their king, because they fianchettoed it. There's some dark squares they would have to defend and they would lose the bishop potentially. But the main idea for black obviously in this position is to break open the queen side and then just kind of use the fact that they have such a strong bishop down that side of the board. Alright, so here they went rook b8, not the best move, but it's fairly clear they're not going to try and take my a pawn and they are defending their b pawn instead. And I continue queen c2. And so in this position, actually the last move that masters keep on playing is bishop b5, but I never considered it. Here what I could do is I could blockade their b pawn. I could, for instance, even play, a4 and c4 and just kind of solidify my light square bishop in that spot for a while, but also blocking off these two diagonals, right? Because, these two files, because my pawns are both defended by my bishop. And it does also, strike into black's position a little bit. But I ended up not doing that. I played queen c2. Seemed kind of natural. Get my queen developed, put it on c2, which is one of the natural squares for it to be. Also on the same file as my opponent's queen, so seems okay. I didn't see any big problems with this. Here then I played knight e5, and you can see here the kind of progression that the knight's going to make. I didn't really see knight e5 as a big problem, but I also didn't see knight g4 as the continuation. Because everything has been happening on the queen side, and like I just said, my understanding is that black is coming at my queen side. I never considered that knight g4 would really be a move for them here. Which is very unfortunate because it's going to become a problem very soon. So in this position, I could have played something like h3 potentially. I could have played something like bishop d5 potentially. Bishop d5 obviously pushes bishops up, and then after they hit it, I have to fall all the way back. But that does also close off one diagonal for their bishop, which could be okay, could be a problem. It's a little bit unclear. I wouldn't really have played that though. I did just play my bishop back right away because I wanted to keep it aiming at their king. I figured that's a very good square for the bishop. It's still protecting my a pawn, and it's also hitting their king a little bit. What is happening now though is with that move I'm giving black this diagonal, and in the very next move they actually take it. So actually get these arrows off the board quickly. Now their light square bishop is looking at my knight, which is also covering my rook, so I need to move something out of the way here potentially before my knight can jump. And also they still have this other one, bishop going down, and their queen is pretty active, and their knight is very strong as well. There are variations where I can play f4, not specifically here, maybe a move of 2 earlier as well. And f4 definitely does make a very interesting situation, not specifically here. But one of the problems with f4 after the knight's on e5 is, and I'll just play it, is the fact that it hits this e3 square. And then I might have to trade off my dark square bishop, because if it runs away, obviously my bishop's going to be pretty bad everywhere else, and it's the only defender of that square, which is going to be a bit of a problem for me in the long run. But there are some continuations here. I could start pushing some pawns up the board in some of them as well. But anyway, so knight e5, bishop b3, bishop a6. Black has finished their development. They are now crisscrossing the board with their bishops. They've got a strong knight. Their queen is out. Their rooks are connected. I've got, what will I say? I've got one bishop looking across the board. My other one is, it's covering both sides of the board, which is very good. I'm not exactly sure what my plan is though, because I've got this isolated c pawn and this isolated a pawn, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be doing with them. My knight on e2 was also a bit of a silly position. It should probably get out somewhere a bit more useful. It developed to there originally, but if it could go anywhere else right now, it would be quite valuable. And in this position, so this was actually the arrows that I had drawn earlier, my plan had been to play bishop d4, put my bishop on the dark diagonal, oppose that fianchetto bishop on the other side of the board, and also defend my c-pawn. So that feels like a really strong move for me. It feels like a good place to be in. Unfortunately, the best move actually, and this comes back to the previous thing I said, is to not put the bishop on that side of the knight, but to put the bishop on f4 instead. Oh, hang on, already so many arrows here. And then I pin the knight to the queen and to the rook, and I'm also making sure that I don't have any problems down that diagonal, because the knight just can't move, right? So I get a little bit of respite, because the knight not moving means the dark square bishop is also not seeing anything down the dark squares for now. So this would have been the best move. Another alternative would have been to move either of my rooks over to the d file. This is the only pure open file that we have, so both of us probably at some point want to put a rook there. And I'm going to take a quick sip of rooibos tea. Delicious. But as I said, my plan had always been to try and oppose the dark square bishop. I did consider at some point, like moving my rook and then putting my knight on d4 as well, but I wasn't sure if that's where I want to put my knight. So I just kind of like kept it where it was, and I moved my bishop instead. And this is a blunder. So now actually black is just better, and they are better because of knight g4. And so here you can see I've got a knight that's semi-hanging, a bishop that's semi-hanging, I've got a queen that's semi-hanging, and I've also got a mate threat on h2. So I can't stop all of these things at once. It's a little bit of a tricky one. So let's say, for instance, I go, okay, cool, well, f5, f4 still works, right? Well, in this case, taking my bishop is check, so I got to be careful about that. Then I'm hanging this potential situation over here, and I'm also, depending on how I take, hanging my knight. If I take with my pawn, for instance, they can trade queens, and then they can take my knight. If I decide to take with my knight directly, then they can fork my queen and my rook. So in this situation, I'm just kind of busted. In one move, I went from being kind of okay, it's an equal game, I'm making a plan, to just giving black a -2 advantage. So I have to stop this in some way, and I've actually played the best move, which is an unfortunate one because I played e5, which is just a pawn sacrifice because black can just take it. And now the problem is that I still have problems on the same diagonal, but thankfully it's not mate, right? So if my h2 pawn falls, it's only check. And so I have at least got a chance to move my h pawn now, again the best move, to hit the knight and kind of force it away, because the knight's the thing that's creating all of these threats. If the knight goes away or is taken, then I don't really have any of these immediate threats anymore. Black continues, also a good move for them. They take my dark square bishop. And in this case, I again have to take the knight, because if I take the bishop, it's mate on h2, right? The queen's now looking down at that mate square. So I take the knight, best move, and here they play bishop c5. And now black has changed their focus. They've broken my pawn structure a little bit by taking my e-pawn, so that's gone. And also, I now have an h-pawn sitting on g4, and they still have their light square bishop pinning my rook, my knight to my rook, and now they have their dark square bishop looking at my king as well. So although I was the one that was kind of looking a little bit at their king, now very much the situation has changed, and it's very, very careful, very, very dangerous for me to move any of the pawns in front of my king. I can't move the f-pawn because it's pinned anyway, but even if I could, it might be dangerous. And if I move the g-pawn, then the light square diagonal opens up, and I don't really have the right defenders. So I can't move anything in front of my king, and that stupid knight on e2 really just should have moved earlier. I definitely made a bit of a mistake with the way I set my pieces into the middle game. I started off alright, but I've kind of gone down a bit of a slope. Although that bishop d4 move was the one that gave black the advantage, I had already created the seeds of the problem by not having like a plan of exactly where I was going to go with my pieces as we developed. So I decided to take the open file. They oppose me, and here I take ones and I move over, and I figure I'm not doing so good anymore. I don't have the bishop pair. I'm also down. Am I down a pawn here? I'm not down a pawn, but I'm down like a pawn structure, right? I've got two isolated pawns, I've got doubled pawns, and they're just really, really active. So I'm trying to get rid of some of these things so that I don't completely lose. In this situation, actually, the best move after they play e3, which is a slight mistake, they actually should have just taken immediately, and then we continue from here. After they play e3, which takes care of my light square bishops attacking diagonal, I should be the one to take. And then after I take, so let's see, this is the best move here, and then I come over. There's a few moves I can do, but I can come over with my queen here. It's a little bit more active. I have a potential sack here to get at their king potentially, and I also no longer need my knight sitting in the middle of nowhere. It can now move, and it's still protected. So everything is a little bit better, but unfortunately I didn't play this. I decided to move my queen right away, and this is just slightly worse. And it's a very simple point of why. Once they take with the rook, I have to take back with the bishop, and I've undeveloped my bishop to d1, and it's sitting behind my knight. So somehow I've actually worsened my pieces with my piece play. Moving my queen out felt like a very active position. I've got a little threat here if they move their rook, where I can maybe like fork some things. But unfortunately, it actually just completely misses the point of improving my pieces and makes them worse. So not happy with this position, and here black comes, and now I am in serious trouble. Both of their bishops and their queen are staring down at my f2, g2, h2 pawns. My knight isn't protecting any of those pawns. My queen is hit, so I have to move it. My bishop is also just sitting in the middle of nowhere. So I have to be very, very careful with what I'm doing here. I'm also wondering if black might be able to sack actually, just to open up my king completely. So I decide, okay, hang on, I'll move my queen to d3. I'm also looking down this open file, and I can move my knight. But here comes black. They increase the pressure. They create a battery, mate threat on g2. Can't move the f pawn, which would have been a nice move potentially in this position, just to get my pawn structure solid. Although the dark squares are very weak around my king then as well. So okay, now I have to defend the g2 square. So I go over to g3 with my queen. I'm still moving my queen, right? So black is really pushing me, and I can't seem to find the right way to protect with my minor pieces. So my queen keeps running around. I'm protecting f2 and g2. I don't know why I got an f2 on there. I also have a check at the back. It might work. I might be able to kind of like check their king around, and at some point either get a perpetual or force something. So let's just give them a silly move. Say for instance I check here. They could block with the light square bishop. If they couldn't and they moved up, I could come in here again, and I could keep on doing this for a while. If they go in here, I could check from the side or something like that. If they run away, I could do this. They have to go forward, and here actually I would have a potential mate, but I mean the chance of this happening is very, very small. So after they moved their bishop over, I protected, or their queen over, sorry, and then they attacked me again. So they're just changing up the diagonals that they're attacking on, but the threat is still there, so I still have to defend. So queen h3, and my line of pieces are still just sitting on d2 and e2. So black is absolutely crushing me with activity, with a game plan, and actually just materially on the board. They're looking a bit better as well. So queen e4, now they're coming in, and I realized that I can't move my knight because then queen e1 actually is checkmate, but even if it wasn't, would lose my d1 bishop, so I move my king over, and now they go down to b1, and now my a-pawn is losing, but my bishop is also dropping, and I can't defend it with my queen because they're still covering, they're still covering the square, so king has to keep on working. And here they take my a-pawn, and now finally I think, hang on, this is the chance for me to move something. But I realized looking at my pieces, I probably still have to end up moving my queen again to bring it into the middle of the board to threaten, I don't know, like the loose dark square bishop, for instance. At this point, we were both kind of low on time, so I maybe if I thought for a longer time would have found a better move. But I played queen d3 not to lose on time, and they played queen d5, hitting my queen, hitting the g pawn, and I can't keep on bleeding pawns here, right? I have to either defend my queen and the pawn in some way, which I can't, or I have to move my queen all the way over to h3 again, or I do, which is the very unfortunate best move, which is just to take their queen. They take with the bishop, and now we're in the endgame. My plan was that I would try to play for some kind of fortress, try and get into a single pawn situation where black's extra pawn doesn't help them to win. The problem is that I can't take all the pawns off the board, and then the extra pawn's eventually going to force me into Zugzwang. So I play with f3, finally, just protecting my pawns a little bit. They bring their king up, king activity obviously in the endgame, very important. And here I bring my king up a bit more, and they walk their bishop off the diagonal, which for me was a very frustrating move, because now we'll see, again, very, very well played by black. Their moves have purpose, but their moves are not rushing. They're not trying to simplify right now. They're taking their time, they're increasing the pressure, they're making me play uncomfortable moves. In a space where maybe I have one good move, they make me play two, so I have to play a good move and a bad move. So yeah, they move their bishop back, just getting it out of the way. For instance, if they want to play the e5 pawn, they're also defending their b pawn at the back there. And so here I play my bishop up. I'm guessing I might be able to trade and win a pawn. I'm also thinking if they move e5, I might be able to put some pressure on their backwards pawn at the end. And here, after they play h5, I have to trade. I highlighted here that there are some squares where I might be able to put my knight, but my knight actually gets taken on all the squares that it could go that might be useful. And I'm a bit too late to get to the party. So I can't, for instance, like... if I had another move, if I had two, whoopsie daisy. If I had two moves, what I could do is I could play my knight over, and then I could push. And after they take, I could fork their bishop and their king, right? But I don't have two moves, and I can't let that pawn just run past all the way, because if my g pawn runs away, my f pawn falls, and this is going to continue to be a problem after I do this anyway. I take and they take, and now this h pawn, if it gets pushed, will force me to take with the g pawn, and then my f pawn is weak. So I play king e3, realizing I have to protect my f pawn, but actually it was slightly worse. Knight c1 was better. Knight c1, trying to reroute my knight, trying to bring it into a bit more of an active position somewhere. But yeah, I just moved my king back. My knight has still not moved. How do you know that you're not doing good in the game? You develop a minor piece and it never moves off that square all the way until the end game. That can't be good. I guess if you had like a fianchettoed bishop and you were crushing it, it might be okay. But a knight on e2 is not crushing. Alright, bishop c5 checking me, also avoiding me from running backwards. I decide to go to d3. I'm also wanting to defend my pawn over here, and I'm wondering if maybe I could put my knight up now and hit the bishop and the pawn, and potentially then I could try and simplify the queen side. So here they come h4. I decide to play my knight over that side instead. I could block, for instance. Maybe I could try and like sack something, but probably not. And finally, I just want to get my knight out of the way. Alright, here they bring it back, hitting my knights. I defend it. And now they bring their bishop around to attack my other pawn as well. And so what I could have tried to do here, for instance, is I could have maybe pushed. And then, I don't know, if they take, I take. Then actually maybe I'm not doing too badly because at least all the pawns are on the same side of the board. If they pushed past, my bishop just kind of has less action. So maybe I could have tried to do something like this. But none of these ideas came to me during the game, unfortunately, with the limited time I have. I actually remember somewhere towards the end, I had to quickly run to the bathroom, and my opponent did the same thing. So like one move after each other, we both went, and we both ran because our clocks were so low. Anyway, so I played knight in2 again, thinking I could maybe put my knight here. But after the king moves across and I do that, they just take. And so actually my nice idea with the knight is actually really bad. I needed that knight to try and cover certain squares on the board. After they traded off, although it's a pawn and same bishop endgame, I have a weakness on both sides of the board. So it's really difficult for me to keep everything together. If you trade here, for instance, and I take with my king, and you play h3, then I can take there and you can take there, but I can't hold on to this pawn. You've got two passes in the center. So I decided to take with my d pawn, and this also obviously feels a little bit, good because I'm covering these squares. It's a little bit harder for them to come in, but it does mean that they'll have a passer on the b file. So dangerous stuff. And here they decided to trade off, and my hope was that I didn't find any other better move than doing that. If I just let them go, they're just slowly going to push until they get there anyway. Then I have to run my king over. I'm busted. So I'm just trying to think if there's any version of this in-game where I might still have a chance. And my hope was that if I isolate another pawn of theirs and also block it on my pawn, so these pawns are just staring at each other, then it's slightly harder for the king to come in. So I can try and kind of like get over to the king side or to the queen side if it gets there. I can come over to the king side if it comes here. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just playing. I'm trying to try and stay in the game in case they make a mistake. They have a B pawn passer though, so it's tough. So here I move over and we get into this kind of endgame situation where I realize my opponent just has too many options for moves. I can't win this because Zugzwang is just too strong. So I still tried to play a little bit more, and here finally I gave up. No matter my move, they're coming in. They have a passer. They also have the king access to take my d-pawn at that point. And if I stop them from taking my d-pawn, which I can't anyway, they'll be able to come in on the a file. And my king can't get in anywhere useful, right? So these squares are all covered. I'd have to go all the way around to try and make something happen. It's just too slow. So if I look at the evaluation quickly, you'll see here that actually there was one move and then I was crushed. And this was a little bit unfortunate because I felt like I wasn't playing super badly, but Black knew what they were doing. I was in a line I didn't know, and I didn't really know what my plan was. So when I played Bishop d4, I had a plan, but it wasn't the right one. And unfortunately, I didn't understand the motif about this very, very, very dangerous knight coming to g4, opening up both the queen and the bishop at the same time. So yeah, it was a bit rough, but it was still a really, really fun game. I'm glad I gave my opponent a bit of a run, although they were just in control from about the second half of the game. And so with that, we finished the tournament with 3 out of 5, so I was really glad to get a positive score. I do think we lost a few rating points. My K factor was very high when I got the FIDE ratings, so I think we dropped a tiny bit. And then we had the recalibration of FIDE around the world, and I think I rose again a little bit. But anyway, it was a really, really fun, very nice tournament. If you ever come to Japan, check it out. Very well run. I think it was only about 40 players or so, so not a very, very big one. But yeah, I had a really great time, and it was so nice to play so many players that I haven't seen before. So let me know if you liked any of the games. Let me know if you continue to like these tournament games. My son has been born recently, so I don't think I'll be going to any OTB tournaments in the near future, but I do look forward to having a chance to go again after at some point, because obviously OTB chess is the best chess. So see you around, be safe, take care, and thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.